Hello, this is the second video that deals with shading and values. As far as this one here, I left off right here where I actually left off on this value scale. As far as this value scale is about going from the darkest to the very lightest, and each one of course showing different degrees. As far as when you move all the way to the light, we talked about, of course, hand movement, positioning of the fingers to be able to get certain results, whether it be very dark, a little bit more medium, a little bit more lighter, and then of course a little bit lightest. As far as some people say, well, why can't I just do it one way? Well, it's a lot about touch. Now, we can definitely buy a box of pencils, and of course the graphite can be in different degrees. Some towards the B, some towards the H's, depending. But again, you really wouldn't be, I guess, well schooled in the sense where you can exercise with just one pencil. So I'd rather you exercise one pencil and learn how to hold the tool, learn how to actually get a really good feel for the tool. So remember, fingertips, good rhythm. The idea of the rhythm that we practice with the Sharpie as far as lines moving across, that helps us create a really nice sense of how wide or control or the length of the stroke. As far as this one here, the idea, again, using this circular motion, circular movement, that'll help us create really nice, well-blended spaces. As far as the next one, as far as this one here, again, I would probably come back and clean it up. I kind of sped through it very quickly, just concentrating mostly on the majority of the spaces. But, as far as if I was being a perfectionist or at least trying to improve, of course, I would always come back, maybe come across it in different directions just to kind of soften some of the shading. Also, of course, maybe with a little finer point, getting back in there, fixing all the little spaces. But again, I have a nice palette, and this is what I want. I want to have this nice sense of variety. So when I do approach drawing and then eventually shading, I do have a nice palette. So again, all these darker values definitely would represent darker colors. Then of course you have like the reds, the oranges, some of the violets. Here you get anything with yellows. And over here, of course, the lightest colors, a lot of colors with a lot of white, tints of colors. But definitely, again, we want to make sure that we practice this as much as possible. So again, this will be the strength of your drawing. You may not be very creative. Maybe your drawings are just so-so as far as you trying to capture proportions and perspectives. It takes a little bit of time for your eyes to kind of start managing. We really don't want to trace an image, and then of course, because then it kind of creates tracing or using the grid. It's too much of a crutch, and people just kind of start leaning upon that. And I don't think there's a whole lot of fun as far as using tracing or anything like that. I'd rather you learn how to trust your eye, examine things very closely, and from there, of course, you'll figure things out as needed. As far as this one I'm going to teach today is about the transition. Even though this is a transition, but it's done in stages. This one here is supposed to be in one long step. So I'm just going to freehand this one. So I'm going to go across and draw a nice vertical. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect as far as the drawing. It's more about the execution. In this case here, we're going to be pushing the shading towards, we'll start in the dark. And then from there, we'll make it lighter and lighter. So this will be done much faster because we don't have to worry about so many stops and stages as we did here. It'll be one long pull. The challenging part is it blended. So let's start again, side to side. From here, I'm going to hold the paper a little bit more firmer, also the pencil, so I can get those nice darks. And as soon as I have my black, I start moving forward. I try not to spill out of the line, but if it does happen, that's okay. You just got to be a little bit more patient. So again, when you see the spacing between the lines, that means you're going a little bit too fast, and the pencil doesn't have enough time to fill in the gaps as you move through space. So again, as I'm moving through space, I try to soften my hand. I'm softening my hand. I'm taking off some pressure, taking off some pressure, taking off some pressure. Moving forward, going a little bit lighter. I'm softening my fingers more and more. So again, once you develop a really nice sense of touch, once you have a really nice sense of the rhythm, you can really move through these transitions without having to stop and reposition your fingers for almost everything. But again, that's why I taught you how to do it by repositioning your fingers. That way it can make sense for anyone being a novice to someone that's intermediate or even advanced. If there are different techniques, different ideas. And again, you should always be welcoming new ideas, new concepts. Even though you may know something like it, but if it's not exactly, it's worth knowing. You always want to improve everything you do. Never be overly confident, especially when it comes to learning new things. As far as what I'm doing here is going back, my eyes are becoming a little bit more critical about some of the areas that may be too light. I try not to make things too dark because I really don't want to go in there with an eraser, just because the eraser itself may make a bigger mess than what I wanted to do, which is kind of clean up. So I went back over a second time. I'm softening. I'm going some of those little spaces where I got a little careless. As far as the transition is moving really nice here. Did it end well? Not really. There's still a sense of where it stopped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off again, try to get a rounder part of the pencil. Rounding, because I'm very, very careful not to leave lines. So I'm going to try soften up some of these corners. So, again, holding the pencil further back. And now this is a really nice feel. I have a really nice feel for the pencil. And I'm going to soften as I move to the white. So again, from back here, I can put the least amount of weight on the tip of the pencil. My fingers are nowhere near the point, so it should be able to be very, very light. And I fit it pretty good, looks pretty good. As far as the rest of the spaces, the transition itself, it looks decent. The eye gets carried over. If I had to be critical and say, well, maybe somewhere in here, maybe that could be extended out a little bit more. I just don't want any areas to be overly gray, and it can look a little bit overly gray, especially if you want to stretch it out very far. If you stretch it out very, very short distances, that's very, very easy to do a transition. But the further you want to move it out, it seems a little bit tough, a little bit difficult. So I'm extending it out one more time with a soft hand. Now my hand's not rubbing against the paper. I have a little bit of weight on the back end. I try not to rub the shading with anything, just because it'll start smudging. Same thing goes for a paper. If you let the paper slide underneath your hand, it's going to start smudging too. But that's a pretty good transition there. The next part is to actually do a little bit of blending. Maybe I'll use the other side of the pencil so it has a little bit more of a point. Come back and kind of clean up some of these little areas. As far as, again, this is the etiquette part. You want to make sure it's clean, everything's refined. So here I will not need big movements of my hand. It'll be small movements, and just very, very small layering. But we'll let the shading kind of move out a little bit. It's not about filling the little gaps. It's about pushing them out a little bit so it looks a little bit more well blended. There you go. So if you can't really tell, that means you're doing pretty good with your blending. So here, very, very soft, maybe just a few little strokes of the pencil. You'll probably be able to see more or less a little bit. But from here to here, it looks pretty good. But again, you can always come back and clean up a little bit more. There's always a room for improvement again. So I'm just going to leave this one alone, just so you can see how that works. The second one is to do another transition, but you're going to be doing it in different spaces. This is very good practice too, because most of the time we always think about black to white, but you don't always have to. So I separate this very, very randomly, and I'm going to transition from one line to the next line, from one line to the next line, one line to the next line, and so forth. So it doesn't always have to begin black. Maybe it can start off as a medium dark. So again, starting off here, I get as far as my hand, moving into the space. We talked about this idea of a triangle, that the arm can move more freely if it's within this triangular shape, because you move forwards and backwards very, very easily. Your elbow can move side to side, or it can move back into space or forward into space much easier. As far as the hand, it's pretty much just kind of locked up with the wrist straight, and I push, 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 looking at the shading as I move forward. As I get to the next one, I try to go lighter, 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 and then lightest at the very, very end. So again, if you do need to switch the position in your hand, well then do it, if that's what's going to give you the better result. I'm going to move backwards and forward a little bit, backwards and forward. This is looking much better. If you hear any voices, it's my little boy making sounds. But that one looks pretty good. On the next one here, I turn my pencil around and go with a smaller point. This one will go a little bit darker. And I'll transition this one forward, but again, only to the next line. So lighter, 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 lightest hand to the light. Kind of clean up that contour a little bit. That's pretty good. This one here, I'm going to switch my pencil around, a little bit more of a rounder side, and I'm going to start off with a medium. So I'm going to go all the way to light, and immediately as you start working your way into space, you have to think lighter, 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 and lightest. Pretty good. Next one, go turn my pencil around again. The reason why I keep turning my pencil, the reason why I sharpen both sides, is because I usually like a finer point and then a wider point. The wider point works really good for big spaces that you want to just power through. Little ones are good for beginning and also doing fine touches. But it's up to you. But usually I find when you do have a better point, a sharper point, especially for shading, you're able to get into those little nooks and crannies just a little bit better. This one I went from a dark medium, and I'm going to white, or maybe I won't go to white, I'll go to a light gray. And this one here I'll go from a black, a lot of power there. This is going to have that nice deep contrast, really pushing hard, but as we're working way forward, I am making it lighter and lighter and lighter. Again, it's very, very important to keep your wrist straight, keep your fingers outwards. Do not put your thumb on top. Try to hold the tool with your fingertips, that way you can really feel the weight, that way you can back off the weight so fast, or very, very subtle. This one here, I'm going to go from a very, very light, holding the pencil further back. And going to white. So again, as far as when I do look at them, the transitions are pretty good. This one's probably got too light, too fast, but it does work. As far as this one, it's a very, very light medium to white, dark medium to white. So you can see that they're all very different. As far as blending these, again, small little rotations from the fingers. And will you get it perfect? So, I don't know. Sometimes you get it very, very close. But, you know, that one you can't really tell. That I left that open. So I'm going to clean up all these little negative spaces a little bit. It doesn't take very much time at all. I don't want to use up too much of my video doing these little things. There's still a little bit to go. But again, as far as execution, it's what you're trying to learn. You're trying to learn how to use the tool. You're trying to learn how to use the pencil. And again, the more you practice, the better you'll get. The more you'll get to know the tool, and the more you'll feel like it is an extension of your entire arm. It's an extension of your hand. And as far as your imagination will feel more comfortable as you keep progressing, as you keep experiencing, you keep learning. You know, your imagination will start peeking out a little bit more. At first, you just want to get the academic side, the understanding side done, and then from there on, you know, you'll see some growth. And that growth will inspire you to be a little bit more creative. You know, that's what most people do in art form, is because they want to be creative. They want to have that outlet. They want to be able to share their creative side with everyone. But again, when the technique is very, very poor, that's a big obstacle. So with any art form, you know, there is a sense of understanding the medium. Whatever medium you're going to use, whatever medium you're going to use as a vehicle. Okay, I'm going to do another video, and it's going to be about using the transition again, but how it would be applied to an actual form. Because right now everything looks like an assignment. It looks like an assignment. It looks like a test or an example. But the next one will be a little bit of both. It'll kind of be moving forward towards actually making a drawing. So I'll make another video for that by itself. That way you can practice that on its own. Thank you.